When Rachel Morgan started spreading poisonous rumors about me, Jonathan Harris, in the office of the multinational company where we worked, I knew she couldn't get away with it. It was like a stab in the back. Rachel was known for her excessive ambition, but I never imagined she would reach this point. Her lies began to erode my reputation, both professional and personal. They said I was negligent, that my work was mediocre, and they even insinuated that I was involved in questionable activities outside of the office. I was determined to unmask her and begin my revenge. I decided that the best way to act would be meticulously, with a well-designed plan. I needed proof. I needed to show everyone who Rachel really was. And, above all, he needed allies. The first week, I began to observe Rachel more closely. In one of these observations, I overheard a conversation between her and a colleague. "Jonathan is incompetent," she said, in a venomous tone. "I don't even know how he's still at this company." Anger consumed me, but I knew I needed to remain calm and act rationally. It was then that I realized I needed support. I invited Emily Parker, a data analyst, for coffee after work. Emily was known for being discreet and extremely intelligent. "Emily, I need your help," I said, as I nervously stirred my coffee. "Rachel is spreading rumors about me and I need to prove she's lying." Emily looked at me, surprised. "Jonathan, I've heard some of those rumors. I know they're not true, but proving it can be tricky. What do you have in mind?" I explained my plan to her, and Emily agreed to help me. The next day, I reached out to Mark Johnson, a company veteran who was also known for his integrity. I told him about the rumors and my plan. Mark sighed deeply. "Jonathan, this is serious. Rachel is dangerous, but I'm on your side. Let's expose her." With Emily and Mark by my side, I began to gather information about Rachel. Emily, with her data analysis skills, managed to access some documents that showed Rachel's suspicious activities. Mark, in turn, began to discreetly investigate her history within the company. During one of these investigations, Mark called me into a corner of the office. "Jonathan, I think I found something. Rachel has a history of manipulation and deception. This could be our chance to expose her." "Great, Mark," I replied enthusiastically. "Let's keep digging. We need more proof." Over time, I realized that the situation was more complex than I imagined. We discovered that Rachel wasn't acting alone. She had powerful allies within the company, which made everything more difficult. However, this only increased my determination. On one occasion, Emily found a compromising email between Rachel and a member of senior management. "Jonathan, you need to see this," she said, as she showed me the email. "This proves that Rachel is involved in a larger conspiracy." With each passing day, the tension increased. I knew I was getting closer to the truth, but I also knew that Rachel could discover our investigation at any moment. We needed to be careful. "Jonathan," said Mark, in a serious tone, "we need to act quickly. Rachel is starting to get suspicious. She may try to isolate and discredit us." I agreed. "Let's continue with the plan. We need more proof, but we're on the right track. We're not going to let Rachel get away with this." The battle was just beginning, but I was prepared. Determined to expose Rachel and restore my reputation, I knew I needed to keep fighting, no matter how difficult it was. I looked for allies among my coworkers, finding support in Emily Parker, a data analyst, and Mark Johnson, a company veteran. Emily and Mark began to provide valuable information about Rachel and her suspicious activities. However, I discover that Mark has secrets of his own and is involved in fraud within the company. My trust is tested. When I decided I couldn't face Rachel alone, I knew I needed strategic allies in the office. Emily Parker was the first person that came to mind. She was a brilliant data analyst with a keen eye for details that most people would miss. I found her in the pantry, having a coffee. "Emily, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. She looked at me, curious. "Of course, John. What is it about?" Rachel Morgan. She's been spreading rumors about me and I need help unmasking her, I confessed. Emily nodded slowly. I knew something was up. Rachel has never been one to play fair. What do you need? Any information you can give me about her suspicious activities. I know you have access to a lot of data. She seemed to ponder for a moment before nodding her head. I'll see what I can find, she said, leaving me with a renewed sense of hope. The next step was to look for Mark Johnson. Mark was a company veteran with decades of experience and an enviable network. If anyone could have valuable information about Rachel, it would be him. I found him in the break room, reading a newspaper. Mark, do you have a minute? I asked. For you, John, always, he replied with a smile. I explained the situation, and he listened attentively, scratching his chin thoughtfully. Rachel, huh? I always knew there was something wrong with that woman. I'll see what I can find out, he promised. In the following days, Emily and Mark began to bring information. Emily was particularly interested in patterns in financial data that seemed strange. John, look at this, she said, showing me complicated graphs on her laptop. These numbers don't add up. There's something wrong here. Mark, on the other hand, brought me reports from colleagues who had problems with Rachel. She has a history of manipulation and lies, he said. But we need concrete evidence to take her down. As we worked together, I noticed that Mark was a little evasive at times. He seemed to avoid certain questions and changed the subject quickly. One day, while Emily and I were reviewing some documents, she raised a question that made me uneasy. John, have you ever wondered why Mark is so willing to help? I mean, he's a veteran here, he must have his own interests, she said. Yes, I've thought about that. But he's been useful so far, I replied, trying to dispel suspicion. However, the doubt planted by Emily began to grow. I decided to investigate Mark a little more. One night, I accessed some old files and discovered something shocking. Mark was involved in fraud within the company. Documents showed he had manipulated financial reports and embezzled funds. My heart raced. How could I trust him now? The next day, I called Emily to talk privately. Emily, I need to show you something, he said, showing the documents he had found. Her eyes widened. This is serious, John. If Mark is involved in fraud, we can't trust him. I know. But we need to be careful. We can't let him know we found this out, I replied, feeling the weight of the situation. From that moment on, my confidence was shaken. He needed to continue with the plan, but now he had to deal with the betrayal of someone he considered an ally. The fight for justice was becoming more complex, and the line between friends and enemies was becoming increasingly blurred. During the investigation, I began to realize that things were much more complicated than I imagined. It wasn't just about unmasking Rachel and exposing the truth about her poisonous rumors. There was a tangle of secrets and fraud that extended far beyond it, involving the very structure of the company. It was one of those nights, while going through old documents in the office, that I came across a file that seemed out of place. Audit Report 2015. It was a document that shouldn't be accessible to an employee at my level, but there it was, almost asking to be read. Curious, I started leafing through the yellowed pages and noticed something alarming: fraud cover-ups and embezzlement of funds. With each page I turned, my stomach dropped more. The next day, I shared my discovery with Emily and Mark. Emily turned pale as she read the documents. John, this is serious. If this comes to light, it could end the company, she said, with a mix of fear and excitement in her voice. Mark, however, reacted differently. He was silent, his eyes fixed on the paper in front of him. Finally he said, "We need to think about the implications of this. If you expose Rachel, this will all come out too. Are you prepared to deal with this?" It was at that moment that I realized the depth of the situation. It was no longer a matter of personal revenge. I was dealing with something that could destabilize the entire company. I spent the night reflecting on the ethical implications of my actions. I wanted justice, But at what cost? The next day, I called Emily for a private conversation. Emily, this is bigger than I imagined. If we keep this up, we could bring the company down. Are you with me? I asked, feeling the weight of decision in my words. Emily sighed, clearly torn. John, I want the truth to come out as much as you do. But we need to be careful. This could affect hundreds of people, their jobs, their lives. We need to find a way to do this without causing a disaster. We decided we needed more information. If we were going to expose Rachel and the company's secrets, we needed irrefutable proof. I spent the next few days diving into files, old emails, and financial records. Emily used her analytical skills to cross-reference data and discover suspicious patterns. One afternoon, as we were reviewing documents in the conference room, Mark abruptly entered. "We have a problem," he said, his voice tense. "Rachel found out we're investigating. She's starting to ask questions." "Shit!" I exclaimed, feeling a chill run down my spine. "We need to accelerate our plan. We can't let her take us down before we expose the truth." "John, we have to be smart," Emily said, trying to stay calm. "Let's gather all the evidence we have and prepare a solid presentation. We need to convince senior management once and for all." The following weeks were a whirlwind of work and tension. Every step we took was meticulously planned. Between secret meetings and sleepless nights, we managed to put together a robust dossier. But every day, the shadow of ethical implications weighed more heavily on me. He was prepared to destroy Rachel's reputation, but he also knew he could destroy the entire company in the process. One night I talked to Sarah about my concerns. "Sarah, I'm about to do something that could change everything. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," I confessed, my voice thick with uncertainty. She held my hand, her eyes full of understanding. "John, you are seeking justice. But remember, sometimes the truth comes at a high price. Just make sure you are willing to pay it." These words stayed with me as I prepared for the final step. I knew there was no going back. He was about to reveal secrets that could change everything, and he needed to be ready to deal with the consequences. In the midst of all the chaos unfolding at the office, something unexpected happened. A romance began to blossom between me and Sarah Bennett. Sarah was a colleague who, at first, seemed to be on Rachel's side. I confess that this surprised me and shook my initial strategies. She was smart, quick-witted, and had a presence that was hard to ignore. However, I always saw her next to Rachel, which made me suspicious. Everything started to change when, one night after work, Sarah approached me while I was reviewing some documents at my desk. "John, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her voice a little hesitant. I looked up and saw the serious expression on her face. I nodded, indicating the chair in front of my desk for her to sit on. "I know you might think I'm on Rachel's side, but the truth is I'm just following orders," she began, the words coming out quickly as if she'd been holding it in for a long time. "I'm afraid I'll lose my job if I don't do what she says." I was silent for a moment, digesting what she had just confessed. It was a revelation that complicated the situation even more. "Why are you telling me this now, Sarah?" I asked, trying to understand his motivations. "Because I can't live in fear anymore. And, because I believe you're trying to do the right thing," she replied, her eyes shining with sincerity. From that moment on, something changed between us. We started spending more time together, sharing our worries and plans. Sarah ended up becoming a valuable ally, providing information she knew about Rachel and her manipulative tactics. But at the same time, our relationship became increasingly personal. One night, while we were working late again, Sarah approached my desk with 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one and smiled. "I thought you might need a little extra energy," she said, with a twinkle in her eye that made me smile back. "Thank you, Sarah." "You are becoming indispensable," I replied, feeling a growing connection between us. Time passed, and the line between work and personal life began to blur. On a particularly tense night, after finding yet another compromising piece against Rachel, I ended up venting to Sarah about my frustrations and fears. I just wanted this all to end soon. It feels like I'm fighting a giant, I confessed, exhaustion evident in my voice. Sarah came over and placed her hand on my shoulder, her touch conveying a sense of comfort and support. "You're not alone in this, John. I'm here with you," she said softly, her eyes boring into mine. At that moment, I realized that my feelings for Sarah went beyond mere camaraderie. There was a deep connection that could no longer be ignored. We decided to take it a step further and admit our feelings, even though we knew it would make the situation at the office even more complicated. Our relationship brought a new challenge, balancing the pursuit of justice with our feelings for each other. There were times when I found myself questioning whether I was being fair to Sarah by involving her in such a dangerous conflict. But she always assured me that she was by my side by choice. "John, you are one of the few people here who actually cares about the truth. And that's why I'm with you," she said one night, as we sat in my apartment, reviewing more documents. As time passed, our bond grew stronger, and Sarah became a key part of my plan. She helped me stay calm and mentally clear, even when everything seemed to be falling apart around us. The combination of love and justice we shared gave us the strength we needed to face Rachel and any other adversity that came our way. But at the same time, we knew we were walking a tightrope. Every misstep could spell doom not only for our plan, but also for our relationship. And that was something we were both determined to protect at any cost. As tensions rose, senior management began to realize something was wrong. I, Jonathan John Harris, knew that time was running out and that I would need to act quickly to keep my plan to unmask Rachel Morgan intact. The announcement of an internal audit was a clear sign that the situation was getting serious and that the company's eyes were on us. I remember the day it all started to unfold. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing some of the evidence Emily and I had gathered, when the phone rang. It was Mark Johnson. "John, we need to talk now," he said, his voice thick with urgency. I met with Mark in the empty conference room. He seemed tense, more so than usual. "John, this internal audit is going to screw us all up. We need to make sure nothing compromises us," he began bluntly. "Mark, I know you have your secrets, but we need to focus on unmasking Rachel. If we can prove what she did, maybe we can get out of this without any major damage," I replied, trying to remain calm. Mark looked at me intently, as if assessing my intentions. "You don't understand, John. It's deeper than you think. If they dig too deep, they'll find dirt that could wipe out the entire company." As I processed Mark's words, I felt the weight of the situation increase. External pressure was threatening to collapse my plan, and at the same time, I needed to protect my own secrets and interests. Internal audit was a sword of Damocles hanging over our heads, ready to fall at any moment. In the midst of this confusion, Sarah Bennett became a crucial pillar of support. Our relationship, which had begun unexpectedly, now became a source of mutual strength. One night, as we were reviewing documents together in my apartment, she looked me in the eye and said, "John, I believe you. I know you're doing this for the right reason, but we need to be careful. Rachel isn't going down without a fight." "I know, Sarah. And that's why we need a solid plan. We can't let the audit catch us off guard," I replied, feeling determination rise within me. With Emily's help, we began reviewing every detail, every proof, making sure nothing was left to chance. Emily, with her analytical skills, discovered inconsistencies in some of the financial reports that Rachel had manipulated. These findings gave us an advantage, but the pressure of knowing that the audit could reveal compromising secrets was constant. The days turned into long, tiring nights, with secret meetings and meticulous plans. The tension in the office was palpable. At one point, during one of the meetings with Emily and Sarah, Mark abruptly entered the room, with a dark expression. "We have a problem. I just received notification of the audit. They want to interview all of us tomorrow," he announced. The air in the room became heavy. We needed to act quickly. I spent the night reviewing our documents, preparing answers and anticipating questions. When I finally put my head on the pillow, I knew the next day would be crucial. The next morning, the atmosphere in the office was charged. The audit team arrived early, and interviews began immediately. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and entered the conference room. The auditor, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes, greeted me with a nod. "Mr. Harris, I would like to ask you a few questions about your recent work and your interactions with Miss Morgan," he said, with a professional tone. As the interview continued, I remained calm, responding clearly and accurately. I knew that every word counted. When I left the room, I found Sarah waiting for me. She gave me an encouraging smile and held my hand. "You were great," she said softly. The battle was far from over, but at that moment, I felt like we had a chance. External pressure still threatened, but with determination and support, I was ready to face whatever came next. When I realized that Mark was sabotaging my investigation, I felt like the ground was opening beneath my feet. I, Jonathan Harris, was determined to unmask Rachel Morgan and clear my reputation, but now I had to deal with an unexpected enemy within my own group of allies. The situation was becoming unsustainable. Everything started to fall apart when Emily called me into a corner of the coffee room. "John, we need to talk," she said, with a tone of urgency I'd never heard before. She was holding a set of documents in her hands, and her face was pale. "I found something you need to see." We went to an empty meeting room and she spread out the papers on the table. "Mark is altering documents. He's trying to divert attention from himself and place the blame on other colleagues. Look at this," she said, pointing to a report that had clearly been manipulated. "It can't be true," I murmured, feeling the betrayal weigh heavily on my heart. Mark was a veteran of the company, someone I trusted. Why would he do that? Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. "He's scared, John. He knows that if you expose Rachel, his own secrets will come to light. He's desperate." This revelation shook the foundations of our alliance. I knew I needed to tread carefully. Sarah, who had become an important part of both the plan and my personal life, was also visibly affected. "John, what are we going to do now?" she asked, her eyes full of concern. "We need to confront Mark," I said, with a firmness that hid my own uncertainty. "But first, we need to make sure we have enough evidence to protect ourselves and expose him." From then on, paranoia began to set in. Mark's every move was suspicious, every conversation seemed fraught with ulterior motives. Sarah and I began meeting in more discreet places, trying to avoid Mark's eyes and ears. "He's getting more reckless," Sarah commented at one of these meetings. "If we keep pushing, he might make a mistake." And that's exactly what happened. In an unguarded moment, Mark missed a crucial detail during a conversation with Emily. "Damn, if they find out about the embezzlement, we're all screwed," he said, thinking he was just venting. Emily, quick and insightful, recorded the conversation and brought me the proof we needed. "That's enough," I said, holding the recorder like a gun. "Let's confront him." The meeting with Mark was tense. He tried to deny it, but the recording was irrefutable. "Why did you do that, Mark?" I asked, my voice thick with disappointment. "I had no choice, John," he replied, desperation evident in his eyes. "Rachel pressured me. If I didn't cooperate, she was going to destroy my career. And now you're going to do the same." "We didn't want to get to this point," Sarah said, trying to remain calm. "But you left us with no choice." From that moment on, the alliance between Emily, Sarah, and I grew stronger, but also more fragile. Confidence had been shaken, and each step needed to be carefully calculated. We needed to protect our backs while moving forward with the plan. The paranoia continued to grow. We began to suspect everyone around us, and the tension in the office was palpable. I knew we needed to act quickly before Mark did any more damage. With each passing day, the risk increased, and the line between friend and enemy became increasingly blurred. In a last-ditch effort to keep our investigation on track, I decided to confront senior management with the evidence we had. "Gentlemen, we have a serious problem," I said, presenting the documents and the recording. "And we need to resolve this before the entire company is compromised." The tension in the air was almost suffocating. The fight for justice was just beginning, and I knew the path would be arduous. But with Emily and Sarah by my side, I was determined to see this through. In a stroke of luck, Emily discovered an email that could change everything. We were sitting in the meeting room, tired and discouraged, when she walked in with a twinkle in her eye, holding her cell phone as if it were a key to freedom. "You won't believe what I found," said Emily, panting. His eyes shone with excitement and fear at the same time. Sarah and I quickly became close. Fatigue and despair gave way to hope. "What's wrong, Emily?" I asked, trying to contain my anxiety. She placed her cell phone on the table and opened the email. It was an exchange of messages between Rachel and a member of senior management. The words on the screen were clear and devastating. "It seems that Rachel is involved in something much bigger than we imagined. This email suggests that she and Jack, from the council, are up to something. Perhaps a large-scale fraud," explained Emily, her voice trembling. I picked up my cell phone and read the content. Every line was a revelation. The conspiracy I always suspected was there, before my eyes. But before we could celebrate, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Rachel wouldn't let this go cheap. "We need to act quickly. If she finds out we have this, we're lost," said Sarah, with a determination that surprised me. "I agree. Let's gather all the evidence we have and prepare a formal complaint. But we need to be careful," I added, feeling the weight of responsibility. We were about to leave the room when we heard footsteps in the hallway. It was Rachel. Our eyes met for a moment, and I knew she already had an inkling that something was wrong. "Jonathan, Sarah, Emily. What are you doing here?" asked Rachel, trying to sound casual, but with a hint of suspicion in her voice. "Just discussing some reports," I replied, trying to remain calm. Rachel smiled, but her eyes didn't follow the gesture. "I hope you're not planning anything against me. You know how dangerous rumors can be," she said, with a threatening tone. She left the room, leaving a heavy atmosphere in the air. We knew time was running out. "She knows," said Emily, breaking the silence. "We need to act now." We spent the night gathering all the evidence we had, but Rachel didn't sit still. The next day, when I arrived at the office, I noticed something was different. My colleagues looked at me strangely, whispering among themselves. Rachel had started to fight back. "Jonathan, you need to see this," Sarah said, pulling me aside. She showed me a series of messages in the company chat. Rachel was spreading new rumors, questioning my and Emily's integrity. "She's trying to isolate us," said Sarah, angrily. "We need to act before it destroys everything." We gathered our strength and decided it was time to take the evidence directly to the CEO. But before we could act, Rachel made her final move. She used her influence to discredit us, speaking directly to senior management and painting us as the villains of the story. "Mr. Harris, I need to speak to you," said the Director of Operations, Mr. Thompson, calling me into his office. "We have received some serious allegations against you and your team." I looked at Sarah and Emily. It was now or never. "Mr. Thompson, we can explain. We have proof that Rachel is involved in a larger conspiracy. We just need a little more time to put everything together," he said, his voice firm. The director looked at us for a long moment, before nodding his head. "You have 24 hours. If you can't prove what you are saying, you will have to face the consequences." We left the room with a mix of relief and panic. We had a chance, but time was against us. As we prepared for the final battle, we knew that the real fight was not just against Rachel, but also against the system that allowed people like her to thrive. When Rachel Morgan started spreading poisonous rumors about me, Jonathan John Harris in the office knew she couldn't get away with it. With an ingenious plan and the help of some unlikely allies, I plotted a revenge that would reveal Rachel's true nature. As the plan unfolded, secrets from the past came to light, and the fight for justice turned into an emotional battle that would challenge our deepest beliefs and values. At a critical moment, Sarah is threatened by Rachel and almost loses her job. This motivates me even more to move forward, but it also makes me question how far I'm willing to go. In a direct confrontation, Rachel tries to bribe me, offering a promotion in exchange for my silence. I refuse, and the tension reaches its peak. It all started one rainy afternoon, when I received a desperate message from Sarah. She was in tears, her voice shaking on the other end of the line. "John, Rachel," she threatened me. "She said she'll ruin my career if I keep helping you," Sarah confessed, her voice broken. Anger rose like a wildfire inside me. "Sarah, don't worry. We'll work this out together. I can't let her hurt you." I knew this was the final straw. It wasn't just about me anymore. Rachel had crossed a line by threatening Sarah. He needed to act now more than ever, and he was determined to see the plan through to completion. The next day, I called Rachel to the meeting room for a chat. She came in with that air of superiority that irritated me so much. "So, John, to what do I owe the honor?" she asked, a sarcastic smile on her lips. "Rachel, we know what you're doing. And it needs to stop now," he said, trying to remain calm. She laughed, a cold, calculating laugh. "Oh, John, do you really think you can take me on? Look, let's make a deal. I can offer you a promotion. How about that? You keep quiet, and we all win." The proposal disgusted me. "Do you really think I would accept that? I would rather lose everything than sell myself to you." Her expression changed, a flash of fury crossing her face. "You're going to regret this, John." I left the room with renewed determination. He needed to protect Sarah and unmask Rachel once and for all. That evening, I brought Sarah and Emily together to discuss next steps. Rachel tried to bribe me. "This just proves we're on the right path," I revealed. Emily nodded in agreement. "We need to act fast. The internal audit is almost over, and if we don't do something now, we could miss our chance." Sarah looked worried but determined. "I'm with you, John. Let's get this over with." In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly to gather all the necessary evidence. Emily gained access to more compromising emails that linked Rachel directly to the corruption schemes. Sarah, in turn, obtained statements from other colleagues who were afraid to speak but who were willing to testify anonymously. Finally, the day of the presentation to senior management arrived. The atmosphere was tense, and I could feel Rachel's eyes burning into my back as I walked onto the stage. "Today, we are here to reveal the truth," I began, voice firm. "For months, Rachel Morgan has been the mastermind behind a series of illicit activities that have harmed our company and our colleagues." I presented the evidence meticulously, every email, every statement, every document that Emily had obtained. The room was completely silent, the tension palpable. Rachel tried to intervene, but was quickly silenced by the CEO. "Rachel, we've heard enough. The evidence is irrefutable." She stood up, furious. "This is a conspiracy. I'm not going down alone." But it was too late. The truth was exposed, and Rachel had nowhere left to run. Senior management decided to dismiss him immediately and referred the case to the authorities. I, Jonathan Harris, finally felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. Sarah and I hugged each other, knowing that we had faced and won this battle together. "Thank you for not giving up, John," she whispered. "I'll always be by your side, Sarah," I replied, feeling a new hope for the future. As Rachel was escorted out, I realized that our fight was not just for justice, but also for our integrity and the values we believed in. And, in the end, that was the most important victory. The internal audit was about to come to an end, and I knew this was my last chance to expose the truth. I needed to act quickly and with precision. I spent the night before reviewing all the evidence I had collected over the weeks. Emily and Sarah were by my side, helping to organize everything into a presentation that would leave no room for doubt. "John, we have to be meticulous," Emily said, her expression determined. "Rachel is cunning, she will try to discredit everything we present." "I know, Emily. But we have all the pieces to the puzzle. They won't be able to ignore the truth," I replied, trying to infuse confidence into my voice. Sarah, who had been a bit sidelined the last few days due to Rachel's threats, finally joined us. "John, I trust you. I know it's going to work. Let's get this over with once and for all." The morning of the presentation arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. We walked together to the conference room, where senior management was already gathered. We were ready to present our case. I began the presentation with a brief summary of the allegations against Rachel, supporting each statement with hard evidence, compromising emails, altered documents, and testimonies from coworkers. Emily and Sarah helped expose the technical details and ethical implications of Rachel's actions. As you can see, I concluded, Rachel Morgan's activities are not only unethical, but also illegal. She has not only damaged my reputation, but has put the integrity of our company at risk. As I spoke, I noticed a strange movement at the back of the room. It was Mark, who looked nervous and restless. Suddenly he stood up and interrupted the performance. "This is absurd. You have no concrete proof. You're just trying to blame Rachel to hide your own mistakes," shouted Mark, trying to divert attention. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was the decisive moment. "Mark, we know you're involved too. We have evidence linking you to fraud within the company. Your attempt to sabotage our presentation only confirms your guilt." The room was silent for a moment, and I felt the tension in the air. It was then that Emily revealed the final trump card, an email between Mark and Rachel that confirmed the conspiracy between them. "Here's the definitive proof. You can't deny it." Senior management was visibly shocked. The CEO, who until then had remained silent, finally spoke out. "We already knew about Mark and Rachel's illicit activities. We were waiting for the right moment to act. Thank you, Jonathan, for bringing this to light so clearly." Rachel and Mark were immediately fired and escorted out of the building. I, Jonathan Harris, have been recognized for my integrity and courage. The CEO called me for a private conversation after the meeting. "Jonathan, your dedication to truth and justice is admirable. We would like to promote you to a position of greater responsibility. We need people like you to maintain the integrity of our company." I accepted the promotion gratefully, but knowing that the real victory lay in the restoration of my reputation and justice finally being served. Sarah and I, now free from the shadows of the past, begin a new phase of our lives, stronger and more united than ever. "John, I'm so proud of you," Sarah said, as we walked out of the building together. "I couldn't have done it without you, Sarah. Now, we can finally move on." And so, with the truth revealed and justice prevailing, we begin a new chapter, determined to build a future based on honesty and integrity. When Rachel Morgan started spreading poisonous rumors about me, John Harris in the office knew she couldn't get away with it. With an ingenious plan and the help of some unlikely allies, I plotted a revenge that would reveal Rachel's true nature. As the plan unfolded, secrets from the past came to light, and the fight for justice turned into an emotional battle that would challenge our deepest beliefs and values. At the climax of this tumultuous journey, I knew it was now or never. We gathered all the evidence, and the tension in the air was palpable. Emily, Sarah, and I were ready to take on upper management. In the conference room, the fluorescent lights seemed brighter than usual, reflecting the weight of the moment. The CEO, Mr. Thompson, was sitting at the head of the table, watching us with an unreadable expression. "Come on, John. It's your chance to lay it all out," Sarah said, squeezing my hand tightly. I took a deep breath and started the presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we are about to reveal not only compromises the integrity of some employees, but also the reputation of this company. Rachel Morgan and Mark Johnson are involved in illicit activities that cannot be ignored." Emily projected the compromising emails and falsified documents on the screen. My heart was beating faster as I explained each test. Rachel was sitting on the other side of the table, a look of disdain on her face, but I could see the gleam of panic in her eyes. Mark, on the other hand, looked like he was in a cold sweat. However, before I could finish, Mark stood up abruptly. "This is nonsense," he shouted, punching the table. "John is fabricating this evidence to get back at Rachel. He's always been jealous of her. Mr. Thompson raised his hand, asking for silence. Calm down, Mark. Let's hear all sides. The room fell into a tense silence as I tried to maintain my composure. Mark, you know that's not true. Everything we're presenting is based on facts. At this moment, something unexpected happened. Mr. Thompson stood up and looked directly at Rachel and Mark. The truth is that I already knew about the illicit activities of you two. I was just waiting for the right moment to act. The room was in shock. Rachel and Mark looked like they had been struck by lightning. What? Rachel exclaimed, her voice shaking. Did you know? Yes, Rachel. And now, with all the evidence presented by John, there is no hiding it anymore. Rachel Morgan, you are fired and will be prosecuted for your actions. Mark Johnson, you are under arrest for fraud and conspiracy. Security guards entered the room to escort Rachel and Mark. They resisted, but there was no longer any escape. The room was dead silent as they were taken away. Finally, Mr. Thompson turned to me. Jonathan Harris, your integrity and courage were exemplary. It is rare to find someone willing to risk so much for justice. As of today, you are promoted to Director of Operations. I was astonished. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. It means a lot to me. You deserve it, John. And as for Emily and Sarah, you will also be rewarded for your loyalty and dedication. Later, we left the building, feeling a huge weight lift from our shoulders. Sarah hugged me tightly. We did it, John. It's finally over. Yes, we did it, I replied, feeling a rush of relief and happiness. And now we can begin a new phase of our lives, free from the shadows of the past. As we walked hand in hand, I thought about everything we had overcome. The battle for justice had been arduous, but in the end, we prevailed. And with that, not only did I regain my reputation, but I also found a new meaning for my life with Sarah. The journey had been long and full of challenges, but finally, the future looked bright and promising.